Hi everyone, I hope you are doing very well. By the grace of God, you are settling in nicely into the semester. This is PHCL 102, that's Philosophy and Classics, Level 100 Course 102, Philosophical Questions. This content will be the fourth presentation on the topics for the semester. And the theme for this topic is moral standards. I say theme for a topic because topics are structured into ethical questions, metaphysical ones, epistemological ones, and then we will consider one or two sociopolitical issues. So the main framework, the main focus is say ethical questions. But then which type of ethical questions are we involving? We'll do some two thematic areas for each of the main branches of philosophy we are engaging. For ethical questions, we have looked at some medical ethical issues, okay, at your level. We've looked at informed consent and all the issues surrounding it as much as possible for your level to grasp. Now, the next ethical issue we plan to discuss would focus on, we'll look at the concept, but then we'll give it a business ethics focus. So we are doing deontology, consequentialism, etc. But we are focusing on an ethical business ethical framework to make those concepts meaningful to you. Okay, so we will focus on the question of moral standards, whether they are absolute or relative. Do we focus on the consequences or the rule to determine what is right or wrong? Okay, in a business setting. The same question can be asked in several other contexts, but like we have said over and over again, if you do not make philosophical issues contextualized, it's difficult to grasp, what actually is at stake. Okay, so we are looking at those concepts, but we are putting them in perspective to help your understanding. All right. So what makes an action right or wrong? On the screen, you see my details. By now, you should be conversant with that. Your TAs will give you theirs as well. Now, what should we cover quickly? We want to make this as accessible as we can without making the video too long. Now that you have a firm grip, I believe, on the question of ethics, which is just one branch of philosophy, this should just be an elaboration on a further ethical question. Then our in-person session will now take up metaphysical questions to be a new ground for that branch of philosophy. So you will need some good, assistance there. So tomorrow and Wednesday and Thursdays in-person sessions at the lecture halls will address a new branch of philosophy, whilst you make do with the video lectures on the supplementary ethical issues that we are dealing with now. That will be the plan. And hopefully we'll be able to cover some good grounds without overly overwhelming ourselves. Okay. So here we'll cover the question of moral standards, whether they are absolute or relative. Then we will look at, under that theme, we'll look at absolutism, which is also called objectivism, also called universalism. Okay. We'll look at emotivism, subjectivism, relativism. Under relativism, all the isms you see here would be so clear to you in some few minutes. Okay. Under relativism, we think of the cultural relativist view, which is nearly empirical. Whilst we contrast that with ethical or moral relativism, which is the one that substantively deals with the question of ethics and raises some peculiar questions against the claim of objectivism. Okay, so you see all the details on your advance, and then consequences or rule. We look at Kant's deontology or rule-based, duty-based ethics versus J.S. Mill and Bentham's consequence-based ethics. Since this is a full core course in level 300 moral philosophy, We will not bother you with all the intricacies, all the particular details, but we'll give you the firm grounding that you need to be able to build on it in future. Even at this level, we are able to use the main ideas of consequentialism, utilitarianism, the types, etc., to advance good argument, either for or against a certain ethical position. So you see Mill, you see Bentham. Mill emphasizing quality of the consequence, as Bentham, as he's interpreted, emphasizes the quantity of the outcome. All right. So are they absolute or relative? What are moral standards absolute or relative? What is absolutism? I've already told you it's also objectivism or universalism. These terms refer to relatively the same idea about what moral standards. So if we don't see absolutism, you would see objectivism or universalism. They are all referring to one way of thinking about what moral standards. What is that? It is the view that the standards by which we judge actions or behaviors as right or wrong, good or bad, are what? Universally applicable and exist independently of us. That's what we mean when we say they are objective. My special students will be listening in. I want to read that again. I'm saying that the view, there's a certain view about our ethical claims, our moral standards. And what is that view? The view is that moral standards, ethical standards, by which we judge actions to be right or wrong, good or bad, those standards are universally applicable. It is not dependent on any specific context. If it is right universally. If it is wrong universally and objectively. So whether I feel good about it or not, if it is wrong, says who? The absolutists or the objectivists or the universalists. Those who hold a universalist posturing when it comes to moral standards believe that their such standards are not dependent on any special context, religion, culture, gender, background, what have you. No, they think it doesn't depend on that. If an action is wrong, it is wrong. Why? Because the standards are universal. So they are called absolutists or universalists. In other words, there are moral standards that apply to all people, says this group of ethicists. They believe that there are moral standards that apply to all people, irrespective of their color, race, sex, religion, nationality, sexual orientation, or any other distinguishing features, and all the time, regardless of the generation or historical era. So, universalist because it applies to everyone, regardless of your context, culture, gender, etc. Objectivist because it is not dependent on the subject's viewpoint, and absolutist because those moral standards stand out. They are absolute. They don't change stature. They are absolute. Says that school of thought. Now that seems to be the general conception of morality. We think of it, or ethical claims, think of them as absolute, universal. So say, how could he have done that? I mean, this is a young child. How can he kill her like that? It's so wrong of him, regardless of where the person is located. Look at how human beings have been killed and spread all over the place like that. Who could do this? This is so bad. And that is someone reacting to a war scenario. Okay, we think that killing is wrong, regardless of who or where or the context in question. Now you'll be amazed that there are challenges raised against the absolutist view that we have shortly outlined. Absolutist view, also called objectivist view, also called universalist view. What are some of the challenges leveled against that view? The concern is if there truly exist such moral standards that are universal and objective, what are these so-called standards? What are they? What is this universal standards that transcend culture, gender, race, sexual orientation, religious background, etc., etc.? What are they? So it is like, show me the universal moral standards that you claim. Which ones are those? Now, you would see three different schools of thought or three different perspectives that will react in challenging, or better still, they react to challenge the absolutist view. One of them is emotivism, the other one is subjectivism, the other one is relativism. All these three, the emotivist view or the emotivist response, the subjectivist response, and the relativist response, all deny, they disagree, they deny the existence of a universal and objective or absolute moral standard. We are going to go through our slides quickly to see what their objection is against what we have outlined as what the absolutist view. What does the emotivist say? The emotivist argument is that there are no objective or universal moral standards because, so there comes the because. If you can see the screen, what is their reason for rejecting absolute moral standards or universal moral standards? It's simply this, that there are no moral facts. When it comes to morality, there isn't any statement being made. When I say it is wrong to talk back at your supervisor, the emotivist says you just expressed your emotion. It's just your feeling you express, not your viewpoint, just a feeling. It's just like saying, ouch. That's how it should take you when you make moral claims, claims of right, wrong, good, bad. The emotivist, these people have a logical, positivist orientation. You don't need all of that for now. When you advance, you will know who the logical positivists were, how they elevated the language, and then how they elevated synthetic and analytic tools so much that they rejected metaphysical claims, moral claims, and thought of them as gibberish. They should be thrown into the bin. I mean, you don't need all of that for now. Just know what the emotivists say. They say they are moral claims and metaphysical claims and what have you cannot be verified. They are not verifiable. You can see wrong. When I look outside, I see the boys killing a cat. That can be verified. But if I say it is wrong of them to kill that cat, the emotivist says, I don't see wrong, I don't touch wrong, I don't smell wrong. Wrong is my feeling of what is going on. So we throw it out. And so take note of their emphasis. There are no moral facts. Okay, therefore, we cannot have, according to the emotivist, okay, a universal claim. In fact, the statement of morality, the expressions of morality are not even stating anything that is either true or false. They are not factual. They are not statements, says the emotivist. They are just feeling. So see what I put on the screen. The emotivist says moral judgments are merely expressions of the speaker's feeling and are intended to influence the feeling of the listener. So when I say it is wrong to kill, per the emotivist rendition of it, you should think of it as saying, ouch. And so, just as if you say ouch, I won't say true or false to it. When you say it is wrong to kill, you should just think of it as emotions, feelings, people's ajay, oh, eh. All these are just feelings being expressed. Now, what are the objections against emotivism? Anytime you see objections, it means what is wrong or what has anyone found wrong with what the emotivist view. Now, having the right feeling about an action may not necessarily make it right after all. You see, feeling right about committing murder does not in itself make it right or wrong. So the emotivists rendering every moral claim as what? Feelings has not really showed us the standard of right and wrong. You see, it doesn't make it right. If I feel good about something, that in itself doesn't make it right. And if I feel bad about it, that doesn't make it wrong. So how do we establish right and wrong? The emotivist should tell us that. Okay, now moral judgments cannot be merely emotive expression. Moral judgment. If the emotivist himself says that, look, you people should, when you consider statements as morally right or wrong, that is wrong. That is the emotivist speaking. Is he not already making claims of right and wrong morally? So we want to assert, that's the second point. The first point is that the fact that I feel that something is right does not make it right. I'm talking about feelings. They might not even exist. What you feel may not even be real, let alone imposing your feeling on the thing. Okay, so we are just dismantling the thing about feelings determining right and wrong. Then the second point, most pertinent, is what? That moral judgment cannot be merely feelings. The emotivist himself would admit, practically speaking, when the emotivist meets another person, the person gives him a slap. Why would he say what you did is wrong? Why wouldn't he say it was just your feelings you expressed? The emotivist cannot live as a consistent emotivist. He will preach one thing and do another. Okay, so there are assertions that can be true or false. We are telling the emotivist that moral claims are not just expressions of emotions. They are assertions that can be true or false. When we engage in moral arguments, when we appeal to moral principles to support our moral claims of judgment, they are not mere emotions at all. They are making claims, assertions, statements, and so they have the ability to be true or false. Those moral judgments we make, when we say it was wrong to kill them, it was wrong to push grandma over the wall like that because you wanted to pass on quickly so you can inherit her property. It is wrong of you to have done that. And when someone makes a statement, it was wrong of you to have done that. That couldn't be just feelings, like saying, oh, oh, wow. That's not what we just did. We made substantive judgment based on principle. So we are telling the emotivist that it would be wrong to reduce standards of morality to what? Emotions only. Okay, then comes the second viewpoint. In other words, the second objection, challenge raised against universal values, or if you like, universalism, absolutism, objectivism. That second viewpoint is called on the screen now subjectivism. Not emotivism, we just dealt with that. Now we have another view that is called subjectivism. So subjectivism. That is the view that moral standards assert truth. Yes, they say something that can be true or false, unlike the emotivist view. Okay, the subjectivist agrees that moral claims say something that can be true or false. However, the truth or falsity, according to the subjectivist, is a matter of personal preference or opinion. It's a matter of what I think. So this one is not feeling, which are empty, but this is fact. I'm making a statement, yes, but the truth or falsity of that statement seems to depend on me. So the subjectivist is claiming that we cannot have universal values, or universal claims or moral standards. The standards are determined by me. So they adopt what Protagoras said, not specifically reference to morality, though, but has been invariably, adopted when we come to moral claims. What did Protagoras say? A man is the measure of all things. A man. Protagoras says, I put my hand in water, I feel the water to be warm. But you put your hand in that same water and you say, that's so cold. And so the water itself may not be hot or cold. Who is feeling the water is the one that is determining the hotness or coldness of the water. Therefore, he concludes, a man is the measure of all things. The subject determines what is right or wrong. You see, brothers, a sister may slap you to your left cheek and you say, wow, slap me again, turn the left one too. See, it slap on top because you are trying to con the sister. But let another person give you a slap. You will see how you react to the same slap, so to speak. Maybe you say that one was harsher. The point is, according to Protagoras, what we consider to be right or wrong, the standard of morality, need not be universal because a man is the subject, is the measure of all things, is the one measuring what is good or what is bad. So on this view, an act is right if and only if the person doing the judging approves of it. I say take note. Subjectivists haven't argued that. They haven't said that moral claims are not factual, are not statements. It is the emotivist that denies that moral claims are statements at all. They think moral claims are not statements at all. And the subjectivist accepts that moral claims are stating something that can be true or false statement, critical thinking. But then that truth or falsity depends on the personal preference of the subject. That's why it is called subjectivism. Okay. And so if the subject approves of it, then it is right. If the subject doesn't approve of it, then it is wrong. For instance, if I say murder is wrong, all I am doing is expressing my disapproval of murder, says the subjectivist. And if you say murder is right, you are also expressing your approval of it. So what is right and wrong is determined by the person judging the act and may vary from person to person. Take note. So morality is for different strokes for different folks. Now, what is the critique or the objection against such a view of the question of moral standards? If what is right varies from person to person, then how can we blame people for acting in certain ways? We are back where we started. Okay. If I see you and I think that rape is okay, is good, really, I'm the guy, and you think rape is bad. If I raped you, how would you impose your conviction about what rape is on me? We won't be able to pass judgment because when I do what you do, if I think you are my daily bread, I'm a cannibal for Christ's sake, and I look at your cheek, how fluffy your cheek is, and I think that would be a good breakfast for me. You cannot condemn my act. You have to make yourself available for me to cut you into sausages because I do not see anything wrong with eating my fellow human being. If you endorse subjectivism, then what I approve of becomes right. If you disapprove of it, that's your own cup of tea. But it is right for me, so it is right. Is that how we live in society? We think that is inconsistent with what we mean by ethics or ethical, the right and the wrong. So we cannot subscribe to that. Okay. How can we blame people for acting in certain ways? We won't be able to. How can we punish people for performing certain actions? What will be the justification for punishment, morally speaking? Okay. So subjectivism implies that each person's moral standard is equally plausible. I've already showed you the implication. The one who thinks rape is okay and the one who thinks rape is not okay are both equally right according to this principle. And so the rapist will feel free to rape the one who doesn't believe in rape. And the one who doesn't believe in rape cannot condemn the other person because there won't be any moral standard. That's the absurdity that will lead us into and how impractical, or if you like, impracticable that can be. Okay, so there wouldn't be any criteria for formulating rules and resolving moral disputes. All right, this shows that subjectivism is not practical. It looks very nice, but you can't practice it. There comes the third challenge. Remember, all these three views are challenging the objectivist, universalist, or absolutist view of morality or ethics. So what does the relativist say? We can think of relativism in two ways. This is quite tricky, so follow me steadily, please. We can think of relativism in two ways: moral relativism and cultural relativism. Look at the word relative to, dependent on, connected to. You see, so the relativist makes a case that we do not have universal moral standards. All the standards we have are relative to. Remember, the subjectivist was only talking about the subject, the human person. You can think of it that way, see. But the relativist say it depends on the context. You see, the religion, for example, gender, you can think of what? Cultural background, political, but especially the case made in reference to what culture makes a strong case for relativism. But let's see if it's sustainable anyway. So there are two ways of understanding relativism. There is the cultural relativism view, and then the other one is the ethical relativism, or if you like, the moral relativism view. What's the difference They are all supposedly reacting against what? Universalism. Cultural relativism only describes the empirical fact of cultural diversity. It just says that cultures are different. So the claim is that, listen attentively, the cultural relativist is saying that, look, different people behave differently. So what is right in one culture, for example, may be considered wrong in another. I give an example. You see, you can't deny this empirical fact of cultural relativism. Why? Think of polygamy. In one culture, it is even something to applaud people for. Why? Because they are taking care of other people by marrying them. The women don't have husbands. So polygamy is applauded in some context. In another context, it is frowned upon, maybe religious, maybe societal, So the point is, the cultural relativist seems to be describing the obvious, seems to be saying that, look, cultures are different. So what happens here will not necessarily be what happens there. And that is why what is right in culture A need not be the same as what is right in culture B. And if our contention here, friends who are listening to me, is that if the cultural relativist just leaves it at this point, then there is nothing to argue over. No one will disagree with this. Even the universalists accept this. The cultures are different. People behave differently. But to move from this fact, this empirical fact of differences, to argue, when you migrate from this level and conclude, therefore, that what is right or wrong should, take note, should depend on those cultures. In other words, your specific culture should therefore determine what is right or wrong. Then you have gone outside of cultural relativism. You are now doing ethical or moral relativism. You are saying that cultures are different. Therefore, what is right or wrong should also be different. You are moving from the empirical fact of differences to conclude that, therefore, what is right or wrong, ethics, the question of ethics, what is right or wrong should also be different. Now that is problematic. So let's see how that goes. You'll be creating a fallacy. Look, the problem with cultural relativism, when you migrate, when you argue that because cultures are different, therefore what is right or wrong in culture should also be different. Should is a prescription. Then we will say you are committing the naturalistic fallacy. You are moving from what is the case to what should be the case. See? So I write something here. The problem with cultural relativism, because people argue from the relativism of culture and then conclude on the relativism of what? Morals or ethics. But you cannot ground, you can't say because we are all different and we all do things differently, therefore, whatever we are doing differently should be right or wrong in itself. No. We may be different. I may be eating human beings and killing them indiscriminately, supposedly. If this culture endorses that and it is killing people indiscriminately, and the other culture is not doing that, the fact that two people are doing two different things doesn't mean therefore each one's own is right or wrong. One may be right, the other wrong. Both may be right, both may be wrong. So the prescription of right and wrong need not depend on the mere fact that they are different. Therefore, we'll be ending in line. Everybody should have their own way when it comes to what is right or wrong. Okay, so you cannot migrate. I want to use very simple expressions that you can grasp. You can't move from the fact of differences in culture, that is diversity of culture, relativism of culture. You can't move from there to conclude, therefore, that ethics or to conclude with the relativity of values or relativism of ethics. So this is what is on the screen. But even if it is the case that right and wrong is different from culture to culture, the question is, should the rightness or wrongness of our actions be determined by our different cultures? The answer is a big no. We commit the naturalistic fallacy when we derive an ought from an is. The fact that something is the case doesn't mean it ought to be the case. So if cultures are different and how they do things are different, and what is considered right in one culture is not considered right in the other, that is just describing what is there, what is highlighted. Now, our question is, should that be the case? Should one culture who is killing people be allowed to continue killing in the name of that is how we do our things here? That culture that has silenced some group of people and is infringing on their right in the name of paying back the crime of their fathers and mothers up to the fourth generation. So 120 years ago, every child, female child born into that home must go and serve to pay back the debt of whatever. They say that is our culture. You shouldn't come and interfere. But if what you are doing is not right, should we accept that it is the case, therefore it ought to be the case? Perhaps we are imposing our views on yours. Perhaps we are not. So can we rely on the relativity of cultures, differences, background, religious, what have you, to therefore conclude that since they behave differently, therefore what is right or wrong should also be different? No, sir. No, ma'am. So that is where we are. We cannot reduce cultural relativism to what? Ethical relativism. Cultural relativism cannot be doubted. You can't even deny it. But to conclude on the basis of cultural relativism, to conclude that therefore ethics is relative, a relative is the problem. When you do that, we will generate a problem. Okay. So that is what you see on the screen now. Ethical relativism or moral relativism is the view that moral standards are always relative to cultural, religious, social, etc. context. It claims that what is right and wrong is determined by the society or culture that different moral standards exist. It should have been exists for different people, not exist. Okay, correct that for me. So that different moral standards exist for different people, different societies, and at different times. That's what the relativist said. We have seen that you cannot defend this ethical or moral relativism thing on the basis of the diversity of culture. Cultures are different. People do things differently. But we can conclude, therefore, that whatever each group is doing is right because they are doing their own thing. No. Fact of fact of cultural differences cannot lead to a necessary conclusion that what they are doing differently are all right in it. So that's a naturalistic fallacy. I'll ask you, that's why I'm stressing it. Now, hence, there are no moral standards different from societal moral codes. That's the implication for ethical or moral relativism. For instance, polygamy may be considered wrong in some cultures, but right in others. Okay, does that make polygamy right or wrong? So we do it differently. Therefore, what we are doing is right for us. You too, you do it differently. So what you are doing is right for you. That is so big a problem. Just like we saw with the subjectivist, we see same with the relativists. Objections. The fact that a culture or society thinks something is right does not necessarily make it so. Period. It doesn't make it necessarily so. It is possible for a whole society to be mistaken about what is right. Much more even is it the case when it comes to morality. I mean, the whole world then was deceived about the position of the sun relative to the earth. The geocentric view was held for over 4,000 years. The whole world, science, everyone, religion, everyone thought, it was the sun rather moving around the earth. The geocentric view for 4,000 years plus, until Copernicus and his folks discovered that no, it is the other way around. So the point is, a whole society could be wrong about what is right or wrong. What we're talking about was not even a moral issue. How much more moral issues, that are more delicate, have direct implications on human life and what have you. You can't use a society's version of what is right or wrong to determine what ought to be right or wrong. If there are no moral standards different from societal codes, then when two cultures or societies clash, there will be no standard to resolve a disagreement or conflict. This may lead to ethnic or tribal conflicts, since both parties claim to be right. Oh my, this is not practicable. It is actually inconsistent. You can't be a consistent relativist or subjectivist so far, because you would then be acknowledging, accepting, and at the same time denying the claim. If I say killing is right, I believe that killing is right. At the same time, I accept your view that killing is wrong. Then it means I accept both one thing and its opposite. Okay? If I say it is good to rape people and pair the subjectivist or the relativist view, that's true for me. Nobody should interfere. The other person may say the opposite, it's fine. But if I'm a relativist, then it means I'm accepting my own view and its opposite, which my colleague holds on to. That is a contradiction. We can't admit that. See. And if you met the person and the person says, I want to rape you, you cannot say, why do you want to rape me? You can't do that. It's wrong. It's wrong saying you are endorsing both. If you accept subjectivism, you must accept what he holds, which is contrary to yours, because you are endorsing subjectivism or relativism. Okay, so those very important principles that I have tried to simplify for you, and I hope that you're able to build on, now takes us to the question of consequences or rule. Now, what makes an action right or wrong? A preliminary slide dealt with interrogating moral standards. It looks as if universalism, with all its flaws, because we struggle to find what the principles are that transcends all cultures. What are they? It's difficult, okay? But then, when we look at the challenges that are thrown at universalism, they are even worse off. So we will better take our idea or assumption that moral codes, moral standards are universal, objective, and absolute. We'll take that as tentatively true. Now, if we know the standards, then what makes an action right or wrong? Do we look at the consequences of that act, or we look at the rule of that act? That's the second part of our presentation. Look at the consequentialist view. Okay, again, I want to tell you that moral philosophy is a whole core course in level 300. You will learn substantive content on that, God willing, by the third year. So the introduction, what we are giving you here, are the philosophical questions of ethics that will lead you to some more substantive issues. We'll do some metaphysics also and some epistemology, so that when you're doing money analytic or you're doing all these other courses you do, you have a firm foundation from level 100. Okay, so what is the consequentialist view? The view that the rightness or wrong, look at the name, consequentialist. The view that the rightness or wrongness of an action is determined by the consequences or effects produced by the act. What did it yield? That's all. That is how you determine whether that action was right or wrong. Says the consequentialist, broadly speaking. Okay. Now you can think of consequentialism in different ways. So on the screen now, we think of the first, if you like, type or form of consequentialism. Ethical egoism. Look at the word ego. Me, myself, and I. That's egoism. When someone is egocentric or I-minded, then you are talking of the type of consequentialism that says an action is right if its consequence maximizes or promotes one's own personal interest or good. That is highlighted there. It promotes or maximizes one's own personal interest or good. That is ethical egoism. It is a type of what? A consequentialist theory of ethics. The opposite also holds that An action is wrong if its consequence minimizes or does not promote the individual's interest. So if speaking the truth will put me in trouble, then the ethical egoist says the right thing for me to do is to tell a lie. Whoosh. That is one form of consequentialism. Then we also have the second one on the screen now, altruism. Altruism is the idea that an act is right if its consequences benefit others or promote the well-being of others. Hey, those ones there, they are all in heaven, altruistic act. They're all in heaven. But look, the focus is it benefits others. So it is also looking at the benefit, the end, the outcome, the consequence. However, this consequence is not the person and her interest. That would have been ethical egoism. It promotes the well-being and benefits of others. Example, being involved in some charity or volunteer work. That is a typical example of altruistic act. Now, there is the third form of consequentialism called utilitarianism. Okay, utilitarianism is one main ethical theory under um, under consequentialism. Okay, I got a bit distracted. Utilitarianism is one of the main theories underlying ethical the ethics of consequentialism. So we have seen ethical egoism. We have seen the second one. We just saw ethical egoism and altruism. I'm trying to take out some content that may not be useful to you now, so you can manage very well. So you know ethical egoism, and then we did the second one, altruism. And so the third one, which you must know, utilitarianism. It is also a consequentialist theory. What does it say? Utilitarianism is one main ethical theory under consequential. Its main proponents are Jeremy Bentham, who emphasizes quantity over quality. That's Jeremy Bentham. And then the other one is J.S. Mill, John Stuart Mill, who emphasizes the quality of that outcome over what the quantity. But they are both, you will learn all of that later. They are both utilitarian thinkers. Now, what do they say? Utilitarianism holds an action to be right or wrong. So let's look at the right. Utilitarianism holds an action to be right if it produces the greatest happiness for the greatest number of people, and wrong if it produces the reverse of happiness. Happiness here is talking about what pleases, so the good. They think of the good as happiness. You have various versions. Some think of, you get a social hedonist and what have you. This is not the place to engage all of that. But let's take note. Utilitarians think that an action is right if it produces what? The greatest happiness for the greatest number of people. And it is wrong if it produces the opposite. In other words, less happiness for less number of people. Now, two forms of utilitarianism. The one that focuses on the action itself, okay, act utilitarian. Then the other one which focuses on the rule that led to the action. You see, so act utilitarianism is the view that the rightness or wrongness of an act is determined by the act itself. If the act produces at least a great balance of happiness or unhappiness in its consequences for all people than any other available act, then it is right. So if we throw one person out of the boat to save 99 because the boat was sinking, there was too much weight, then the act utilitarian considers that as what? Right. the action was right. Why? Because it benefited 99 people. Only one person was killed. That's okay. Per the act utilitarian principle. Two forms of utilitarianism continue. The second one is what? Rule utilitarianism. That is the view that an action is right if it is in conformity to a rule. It is the rule, which maximizes the greatest happiness for the greatest number. So the rule utilitarian is not necessarily looking only at the act itself, but it's looking at the rule undergirding that act, the rule that grounds that action, okay, which yielded greatest good for the greatest number. Okay, so it is still consequentialist, except that it doesn't focus on that specific act, but the rule that underlies the act. Okay, so rule utilitarianism considers the consequence that results from following a rule of conduct. You told the truth, and that is why 99 people were saved rather than and only one person died. You spoke the truth. So the rule utilitarian will emphasize the rule that grounded the action, not just the act of throwing someone, but why did you throw that person out? The rule. What moral code were you applying? What moral rule and underlying that action? Okay. All right. Now, problems with consequentialist ethics, generally speaking. See, all consequence-based ethics will have these challenges that I have outlined. Your role is to find more so you can enrich your essays. Can we always measure the full consequences of an action? What of the rights of the minority? If you say the greatest good for the greatest number, what the plenty say? How about the rights of the minority who may be sidelined because they don't have a voice? They were only 10 people out of the 100, and out of the 100, only 10 are saying yes to the issue. Because they are 10, they are ignored. But if 90 people said yes, you see, and 10 said no, by the principle of by the principle of consequentialism, you will ignore the 10, my dear friends, and just focus on the 90. Why? That is problematic. Okay, so we feel that consequentialist ethics ignore minority. You are not able to measure the full consequence. You thought you threw only one person out and saved 99. That's what you think. But could it be that that one person you threw out is the one that knows how to steer the ship after all? So you thought you have saved 9 by killing one or throwing one out. But that one that has been thrown out will not be available to save the 99 after 3 days when the ship needs to be steered. Now it's clear to you that at the time you were making the decision, you didn't really know the full consequences of your action. Can we ever finish measuring the consequences of an action? Should we ignore the right of the minority because majority says something? You see? Then would we not undermine human dignity? You see, by using others as a means to an end? I've said that already. So far as the end is good, we care less the means. Should we use human beings as a means to an end? If you are the type that says the end will justify the means, then careful, you are speaking consequentialism. Are you able to defend that in all contexts? Should we use humans as means to an end? Questions for you to reflect on. Now pause and reflect. There comes our business ethics. You know the broad principles now. You can apply them to different contexts, but we are going to apply them to a business setting. A multinational pharmaceutical company is faced with the ethical dilemma of telling the general public the truth about a mishap in the company's drug labeling, which has resulted in the death of 4 unborn children and leaves many more at risk. The drugs are not retrieved from the market immediately. But the challenge the company faces is that admitting this truth could attract crippling legal charges, drastic reduction in patronage, and reputation crisis. You know what that means already. Now, this is the question for you to reflect on. As a consultant, give a reasoned ethical advice to the company, showing clearly the ethical basis of your advice, the basis, on what does your advice stand, what principle. Okay, that's what I mean. Clearly, the ethical basis of your advice. Show the challenges you envisage and how to deal with those identified challenges. Now, this cannot be philosophy as abstract. Who says so? All the discussions we've had, deontology, consequentialism, relativism, subjectivism, all the isms we learned must come to play in your mind here. So when we are learning them, they are isms. Now you have to apply. The people have wrongly labeled the drug. It is gone to the market. It was an error, a genuine one, not intentional. But the drug didn't have mercy on the little ones. 4 dead already and still counting. The drugs are out there. But the business entity has a target. It is there to make profit and to save lives, of course. If people lose, if the company loses its credibility, many more people will die because they won't even buy the drugs, the other drugs that are good anyway. Company workers are in trouble. Some may even commit suicide. Now, what do? If the company cripples down to zero, I mean, a multinational pharmaceutical company, have you thought about the nations that they are importing and exporting drugs to? Sometimes overly subsidized, say in Africa, where we come from. So it is not a straightforward decision, sir. You have to reflect. So you are the consultant, a business consultant. They've come to you, give us a reasoned ethical advice. And obviously, there will be some counter responses. So you want to show the company that these are the challenges I envisage. But this is how I think you are able to deal with it. Do it and let's see how you would have done it. You can discuss it amongst yourselves as a group or a tutorial or when you form your own study groups, but reflect on it. All right. Now the second, we have some 2 slides to go to beef up your discussion of that reflection paper. Deontology, also called what? Kantianism, from the word Kant, Immanuel Kant's name. So it's Kantianism. That is what rule or duty-based ethics. Now, deontology, from the Greek word dion, meaning duty. It is the ethical theory proposed by Immanuel Kant. The theory claims that what makes an action right is that it satisfies certain rules or duty. And it's wrong if the action is contrary to the rules or duty. And this alone, you see the principle of universalizability, the golden rule, do unto others what you want others to do unto you, and all that when you engage moral philosophy proper. Okay. But what should you know for this level? Know that deontology is based on duty. So you act and your action is right only if you acted on the principle of universalizability. You did it because if you were in the person's stead, you would have wanted same. So don't say that, hey, dog. Some people will say that me too. Okay, if it was me and they stole my thing, I won't say anything. So me too, I'll steal. Kant says you are lying to yourself. Can we make stealing a universal law? Telling the lie, can it become a universal law? We all agree that we value what is it? Telling of lies. We make it a value that we should all agree that killing has become a value, something we all value. Not that I have found myself in a situation, that's why I told the lie. But now it has become a value, a universal law, applicable everywhere. Which society will remain? How will we do contracts? What will ground contracts? There will be no need to establish contract because we all know that we are lying to ourselves from day one. People will not give their children up for marriage. People will not go to school. Going to school to learn what? When you finish, even the teacher is telling you deontology is Kantianism. Meanwhile, he's lying. And we all value that and cherish that. society will break down. So what? So Kant is saying that if we are sincere to ourselves, the principles that we will evolve based on duty will be what? Those that are universalizable. Okay? And so if you act based on such principles, what he calls the categorical imperative. Don't worry. It's an imperative that is categorical. Okay. Then what? That action will be right. So for your purposes, just study it this way. Dion, action that is performed out of duty. Duty for out of duty, that action is right. Here, the rules are to be obeyed not because they maximize utility, not because you have consequences, usefulness, egocentrism, altruism, not because of whatever it produces, not at all, but because they have intrinsic value, or those acts are what good in themselves. And Kant will go further to show you how to determine an action that is good in itself. Telling the truth is good in itself, regardless of whatever consequences it produces. All these principles that we call good in themselves. So he's saying that perform the action. You are telling the truth because it is good to tell truth. Not because if you tell the truth, then one day you too, when you are in that situation, someone, then it means you are telling the truth because of what you get from it, whether as an individual or what others will get from it, altruism, or what's the third one? You are telling the truth because of its usefulness, utility. Kant says that shouldn't come in. You tell the truth because that is the truth. It is good in itself, regardless of its outcome. So you don't look at the outcome. That's why you would have to tell the you would have to tell the truth, even if it means what? The thief that ran into the parish for safety because they were following you. If you tell the truth there, you are going canting. You say, no, I know that the people were coming with machete after him and all that, but you cannot lie. As a child of God, or as a priest, you cannot lie. You have to tell the truth regardless. Did you ask Rahab? I told you during the interactive session, Rahab of the Bible, Joshua chapter 2, she lied through her teeth. I have never seen those two people. Those spies, they never passed by. God preserved her. Did God say you should go lying? No, thou shalt not lie. But could it be that the context, a specific context, may require of you certain reactions? I leave it as a question for your reflection. Okay, that's Kant. The theory holds that actions are determined by their intrinsic value, hence consequences do not matter, says Kant. What matters here is one's intention, take note, or the reasons for performing the action. And the reason must be what? Out of duty, regardless of the outcome. Out of duty, regardless of the outcome. That is what he calls the categorical imperative. That is what we call what? The universalizability, the principle of universalizability. An action that can become universalized is that which would be acted on out of duty. Okay, so remember deontology, remember Dion, remember good in itself or intrinsic value. Remember, he doesn't talk about maximizing utility. That is the outcome, how useful it is, who benefited what, how many got what. No. Kant says, even if it's only one ant, one human being out of the millions in the world, and the principle grounding that act is a genuine one, then it makes the action right regardless. That is Kant for you. Okay, now 2 slides and then we are done. Problems with deontology. The theory is too strict and overlooks the fact that not all our moral experiences take the form of rule following. It's too mechanical. That's the critique. Okay, sometimes we are moved by emotions or compassion to act in certain ways, not necessarily by rules. So if we reduce everything to the rule or the principle underlying our action, some of our actions cannot be captured. We don't know where to place that because I'm just moved. I don't owe the girl begging for money on the street anything. You see, I just feel moved as a human being. I feel, oh, let me give her some. So I'm acting out of love, out of emotion. Jesus didn't owe anybody anything on this earth. They didn't tell you to go and eat the food. But he came to die out of love. That's what I believe. Now, so if you make everything strictly by the principle, if this is the rule, give unto others this, or this is then we will have issues. It will be too mechanical to be real. Okay. When we discuss and you bring your questions, I'm sure we can throw a bit more. Like the rules are made for man, not man, but the rules. So sometimes if you overly become mechanical and strict about keeping rules like that, you may miss the import of the rules. The rules are meant to guide so people can attain outcomes. But if you also take away the rules and you're only looking at the consequences, everybody will steal, everybody will cheat in an exam because they will be able to point to a reason why they cheated. And society will break down. Someone will enter your office and pull a knife and say, give me all the books you wanted. I said, give me books. When the person goes and say, you have to understand, I have to do that, otherwise I won't eat. You see, someone is chasing someone else's husband or father or sister or mother because he feels that that is the only way he or she can survive. Have you thought about the other person and how he or she is feeling? So you can't begrudge Kant too much when he's overly fixated on keeping to the rule. Act out of duty. That simply means if it is wrong to steal, then do not steal. Go hungry and die. You will go to heaven than stealing or cheating or lying so that you can survive in the name of, you see, if I didn't do that, my sick mother would have died. All right. So we feel that the critique is it is too strict. And you see what I did right now? I played the devil's advocate for him and then showed the problem with that and then responded as if I am against him. And then the next minute so that you see all the various aspects of the matter. Then when you finally agree on what you think should be the case, you will have grounds and you know where the weaknesses could be and strengthen that. That's how it is philosophy. Okay. The second problem we can have with deontology is that it does not provide us any criteria for resolving conflicting duties or rules. So do I tell a lie to save a life? Because they are both duty. Duty is calling on me, the principle. Save a life or preserve human life. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not lie. So which one should I uphold over which? When the thief runs into my parish, I'm supposed to tell the truth, but I'm also supposed to avoid killing or not to kill someone. So we are not furnished with information on how to deal with conflicting duties. In other words, both principles apply and they are conflicting. What do I do? Kant's mechanics didn't tell us that. If it's a consequentialist theory, I'll look at which one will yield the greatest good for the greatest number, C, and make a decision. All right. Read around, research, reflect, and find your own. Then come and add it to what you have. And then you are doing university education. Now, the second reflection question, I put them in to help you. When you are reading, you see the relevance, then it will help you reflect. Okay, so you know all the principles. Now, so what? So this is how it can apply to a context, okay, for you. An employee has been accused of theft, stealing, and been brought before the disciplinary committee of the outfit for hearing. The employee pleads not guilty because he needed the money only to pay for prescribed drug to save his sick, dying mother before it was too late. If you are very attached to your mother, then you can appreciate such issues. But perhaps maybe you are not. You are already angry at mommy for some reason in the past. Maybe she didn't take care of you or she left you, etc. Then some of these issues you think, oh, hey, I mean, I'm not going. You're not going to still take care of my mommy, But if you would just look at it holistically, then you can see the tension there. I took the money because I needed to take care of my mother who was dying. If I didn't do it quickly, she would die. I can't go through the process of going to stand there. Please, I need help. People bring money. Everybody give me 20 Ghana, 20 Ghana, let me gather. No, I didn't have that time, says the person. Now, our question to you is this. A, is his act deontological or consequential? Explain your answer. You see that it is neither yes or no. You have to show us why you think he acted based on deontological principles. Or if you think he acted on consequentialist theory, which one exactly? And why do you say so? Okay, this is just purely seeking your thoughts. Then B, if his acts were consequentialist, did he act altruistically, egoistically, or by utility? Briefly explain your answer. You can reflect on that during your tutorial sessions. You can bring them to our live sessions. Not this week because we are doing our in-persons for Plato's Allegory of the Cave, but then the subsequent weeks, when next we have our live session, or intermittently, we can have discussions on that. Your duty, according to Kant now, your duty is to study the content, be guided by the course outline, okay? And you will do fine. So God willing, Tuesday group, I'll see you tomorrow, the 29th of June, for our Plato's Allegory of the Cave. You already have a notice to read ahead of that. We'll be doing the question of reality versus appearance. It's no longer ethics. We have moved into metaphysics. This one will discuss metaphysics. We'll do the same thing on Wednesday, the same thing on Thursday, main campus. City campus will do both of your sessions in person on Wednesday, 12:10 to 2:10 and 2:30 to 4:30. We will be discussing Plato's Allegory of the Cave. So there is no point attending all the 3 sessions for main campus and even traveling to city campus just to go and study Plato's Allegory of the Cave. The classes will be overwhelmed. As soon as we exceed 1, I block all the in-persons. We don't even need it already. But since students are agitating, the university has asked for it. I have sacrificed quite some good time to make myself one person available for just this course 5 times a week in person. In addition to doing online, it's quite a headache already, but it's enjoyable because we don't only see it as the duty, we also see it as a calling. So we are doing it. What you won't help us with is where one person is present Tuesday, Wednesday, to he or she is there. We don't have the capacity at our lecture hall to take all the 900 of almost 1,000 students from main campus in at a go, COVID protocols and all. So if it will create a nuisance and will attract unnecessary publicity, the in-persons will be cancelled. That is why you attend your signed up group only. Go to Sakai and firm up your signage before then. I want to wish you very well. Always remember to do some praying. It helps if you believe in it. All the best and take care.